Anyways, let's go ahead and get started. So, this is going to be my review of Hollow Knight. I just went through and finished the game in 4 days. I basically did nonstop, played Hollow Knight for 4 days straight. It took me about 24 hours, and my final completion was 106% completion. I didn't end up getting 112, which is the highest percentage completion in the game. There's some things that I didn't end up finishing as far as like some content, but I think I've done enough of the game, like over 100% of the game, so I can give a relatively accurate representation of the game as far as my experience with it. So that's what this review is going to be. I'm also doing this live on my Twitch if you're watching this on YouTube. So I stream basically every day. Come check me out. So yeah, we have 24 hours of content to sift through. I'm gonna try and make this as brief as I can, but there's just a lot to talk about. There's a couple of points that I want to bring up and then find video examples of what I'm talking about in my playthrough. So we'll go ahead and get started. At the very beginning, you can see that there's already two files. This is my third attempt trying to beat Hollow Knight. My first attempt, I got about 13 hours in, and then I stopped playing because I was lost, I was bored, and I was frustrated. And then I tried again, like I think it was like 2 years later. I started another playthrough, and I got about 6.5 hours in, and then the same thing happened. I got lost, I got frustrated, I got bored. I felt like the game wasn't giving me what I wanted out of it at that point in the game. So I just gave up. It was like, I'm not having fun. This doesn't feel fun. I'm just gonna leave and stop playing it. And then something clicked about, like, I don't know, like about a week ago, where I'm like, you know what, I should finish this game. The sequel's coming out, and I want to be able to play the sequel in a way that feels genuine. And I feel like I never gave this game like the best opportunity to like be its best self for me, I guess is the way I'll describe it. But yeah, I'll get into a lot of why I felt like the game was very harsh at the beginning. But yeah, the very beginning of the game starts off relatively slow, and I've already said it once, but as far as like movement mechanics go, I'm just gonna mute my old self so I don't get confused. Movement mechanics, you literally, all you have is you could walk left and right, you can jump. The jump in this game also, I'm not a big fan of, because the jump itself, it's not a parabola. How do you say it? Parabola. The jump isn't like a parabolic arc. It's very linear. The way that you rise and fall feels very linear with the jump arc. So it takes a little bit of a learning curve to get used to just how the jump feels, compared to other platformers that have more of a parabolic arc. It's like a small thing at first, but it adds up because there's a lot of platforming in this game. They added a lot of platforming sections in this game. The other thing that is very difficult at the start is that the game is very massive, and you get very, very, very little direction. Just going around and exploring the game, you end up running around in circles a lot. So if you're not prepared to be okay with backtracking through the same sections over and over again with minimal movement options, then like the very first part of the game is going to be very frustrating. And that's how it was for me for every time that I've started to play the game, is that the movement options themselves, being as limited as they are, makes backtracking very annoying to deal with. Overall, this is just me just exploring stuff, but it takes about, for me, how long did it take me? I get my first upgrade about 30 minutes in. This is where you get the first upgrade. Let's find it. Yeah, I've already gotten it. It's the fireball ability. What is it called? The Soul Blast. Fucking Kamehameha, whatever you want to call this attack, that little fireball. I made a conscious effort on this playthrough to use that attack more often, because the issue with this attack is that it's given to you very early on, and it's quite powerful compared to like your normal sword swinging, your nail, as it's called. It's much more powerful than your nail, but it costs soul, and soul is this stuff at the top left. It's that little white gooey stuff. That's your soul meter. And you use your soul meter to both heal yourself by holding down the B button, which allows you to focus, and then you can heal yourself damage. So if you're not doing well, and you're going to be using your soul on focus so you could heal yourself. But it also is required in order to use the fireball. So in a lot of situations, you have to choose between being able to heal yourself or being able to do more damage with combat. I opted to force myself to do more damage and heal myself less, and I ended up having more fun doing it that way. It's a more aggressive playstyle, and I enjoyed myself more than my other playthroughs, where it felt like this game is very unfair a lot of the times. There's a lot of cheap shots. There's like spike traps. There's spikes that fall from the ceiling that you can't see. There's enemies that come out of nowhere and have like unreactable patterns. So you take a lot of damage in this game, and most of the time it's not your fault. It's just cheap kind of like gotcha damage that the developers throw at you. But the developers gave you the option to heal yourself at any time as long as you're like safe and away from other enemies. So most of the time it evens out, but then you also have to choose whether or not you would rather use your soul for damage or use it for healing. You can get more soul by doing damage to enemies with your nail, so it creates a interesting combat system that is a little unintuitive at first, and I think most people will gravitate towards healing most of the time. But you actually end up doing better so long as you heal less and do more damage overall. Yeah, the blast ends up being about 3 times stronger than your starting nail. So overall, you want to use the nail to gain soul, and then use the soul on the the blast. At least that's the early game strat for doing as much damage as possible. Here, I fell into a pit because I wasn't using the right stick to look around as much as I could have. So most of the time, a lot of the platforming in this game does require you to use the camera to your advantage to look around before you actually platform, like before you actually move around. So it ends up making the platforming a little bit slower at first, but you kind of get used to it, and it gets alleviated a lot once you get more movement options like later in the game. But I would say my experience with this game is that the early game is very brutal for players that don't know what they're doing. I think if you're playing with a guide, or if you have a friend kind of giving you hints, or if you just looked up general strategies for combat or general strategies for how to make it through the game for like the first like 4 to 5 hours, I think you're going to have a much better time if you started the game out and got frustrated or lost or something like that. Because it's very easy to get lost in this game because the map is absolutely massive, like I said earlier. But anyways, this is like my first 30 minutes in the game. You get your first movement option. Where is it? I still haven't gotten it yet. You go through green path to find the first movement option of the game. Did I finish my time in green path? Did I get it already? I still haven't gotten it. Otherwise, I'd be using it. Okay. I'm doing a lot of extra exploring, just because I don't want to miss anything on this playthrough. I was kind of aiming to go for close to 100%-ish, and I ended up finishing close to 100% by the end of the playthrough. This fight, I actually enjoy a decent amount. Most of the fights in the game, like boss fights that is, are pretty okay. There's a couple that are a little annoying, but most of the boss fights in this game are fair in the sense that all of the attacks are telegraphed enough. You just need to know what you're looking for, and you learn it over time. This boss fight, I think I die on my first attempt because I had a hard time distinguishing whether or not Hornet was like charging an attack or like throwing the nail out. That was like what I was getting confused about. So yeah, death in this game can be quite punishing as well. Okay, so I've died. This is, I think, my first death of the run or of my gameplay at all. This is my first death in the game. So you see your soul meter is cracked, so you can only hold half of this orb of soul meter. So your ability to do combat is weakened in this form, and your ability to heal yourself is weakened in this form as well, because you have less total soul in order to actually do like the things that you want to do. You also lose all of your geo, and I'm going to talk about geo in this game because it's one of my biggest complaints is that the geo system in this game I think is a little unbalanced. So if you die once, it's similar to Dark Souls. You lose a bunch of stuff. You have to go back to where you died to regain the rest of your soul, to regain your geo that you lost as well. What happens is that you have a shade. This is your shade. It's a physical enemy that spawns in around the area that you died in, and then you have to kill it. You have to go out of your way to do damage to it in order to kill it. and then you reabsorb it and you get your geo back. Like you can see here, I got my geo and my soul meter is refilled, basically. But if I were to die again before recollecting the shade, all of that geo that you lost is gone forever. So that's the main downside. And geo in this game is extremely important. I'll try and find, I think it's right around here. No, it's not here. There's a point in Green Path where geo is quite important. One thing that's important to note about geo is that all of the stag stations, which are essentially the fast travel points in the game, they all require you to purchase them with geo, usually somewhere around the 200 geo mark. And 200 geo, especially early game, takes a while to grind. Like you would have to kill the same enemies like over and over and over again to get that kind of money. So if you're dying constantly, it's very likely that you're not going to have enough geo to buy the fast travel locations. So you're going to have to backtrack through dangerous areas again, where you're also very likely to die. So the geo system, in my mind, it seems to be like a negative feedback loop, where if you lose your geo, you're weaker as a character, because you have less geo to buy upgrades and to buy fast travel locations that can help you get to more areas quicker and stuff like that. So it takes longer for you to get around. You're a weaker character in general. And that causes you to die more often because you're forced into these scary situations because you can't fast travel. So you're forced into these combat encounters. You're weaker because you can't buy as many upgrades with geo. And then it causes you to die more. And then you die more, lose more geo, die more, lose more geo. And it's a negative feedback loop. And the opposite is to be said for people that are doing well. So if you don't die and you get to keep all of your geo and you constantly have geo, then you can purchase upgrades. You can purchase fast travel locations. There are certain benches which you consider, they're basically your save locations. They're where you save the game, and it's where you refill your health. Those save locations, there's 3 of them in the game that you have to purchase with geo. The geo requirements for some of these things aren't necessarily super high, but if you die, you have 0 geo on you. So it basically forces you to always backtrack to where you died to get your geo back if you want to progress in certain locations. It forces you to like get your shade and your geo back. And because it's an area that you died in, it's likely a dangerous area because that's where you died. And you're a weaker character overall because you have less soul, so you can't heal yourself as often. So it's very likely that you end up dying again, especially if you're a player that has like a weaker understanding of the controls. So essentially the geo system acts as both a positive feedback loop for players that are doing well or a negative feedback loop for players that aren't doing well. Someone's bringing up you can summon your soul back to Dirtmouth if you has a rancid egg. That it gets unlocked with a simple key, and the simple key that you get to unlock it, for most players, the first simple key, if you decide to use it for that, costs like almost 1,000 geo. And if you're dying a lot, you're not going to have enough geo to buy the key to unlock the area. And also, that's more of like a mid-game option. I'm talking about at the very, very start of the game. And most people, when they're going to have deaths, it's likely going to be the start of the game when they're still getting used to the controls and still getting used to like navigating the world. So for most players that are brand new to the game and have a hard time getting a hang of the controls, they're likely going to die a lot, which means they're likely going to be losing geo a lot. And this game very, very, very much punishes newer players at the beginning of the game not having geo, because geo is required for several benches. It's required for every fast travel location. It's required to purchase a simple key, which is required. Like you need a simple key at some point in the game, either to unlock the ability to get your shade back from any location, or as a way to get to the royal waterways later in the game. Geo is also required for the lantern, which is like almost 2k worth of geo. So yeah, so a lot of stuff requires geo in this game, and it's extremely easy to lose it if you're a newer player who is struggling. And on top of that, the game does not pull punches. The game is very, very difficult in various different ways. So the geo situation, I think, is one that I personally would tweak a lot. Because that's just talking about the start of the game. So the start of the game, Geo is scarce and difficult to come by in a lot of scenarios. And then in the late game, you have way too much Geo. You're very likely not going to die at this point because you're in the late game and you've just acquired a shit ton of Geo and you're just kind of hoarding it at that point because you don't have anything left to buy with Geo and there's no like consequence really for losing it anymore. I think Geo is meant to be similar to how Souls worked in the Dark Souls games. The issue is that Souls aren't that important. Like, yes, they're important for leveling your character up and purchasing certain things from shops and stuff. But the thing is like, if you die a lot in Dark Souls, you're rewarded at least at the end of the game. Or not the end of the game. You're rewarded at the end of every boss fight with a ton of souls. You're given all of the souls that basically you lost on your way to that boss fight from dying over and over again at the end once you've defeated the boss. So the feedback loop in Dark Souls is a lot of the time is like, you have a bonfire. You go from the bonfire to the boss. You die a lot in that bonfire run over and over and over again. You're probably losing some souls along the way. You're gaining souls along the way for killing the same enemies. You're getting better at that bonfire run. You end up losing some souls, but once you finally finish that bonfire run, killed that boss, defeated the boss, you get a bunch of souls from killing that boss, and you basically make up all the souls you would have lost. In this game, when you kill a boss, you don't get Geo for it. Very, very rarely. There's some mini bosses that you'll get some Geo for, but you don't. You're kind of just like, okay, you beat the boss, way to go. Here's an upgrade. So it just doesn't work exactly the same way. Yeah, and if you just kind of get unlucky with your playthrough from just not knowing what you're doing, you can end up misusing your keys in ways that like aren't very beneficial overall. Your Geo could end up getting wasted on things that aren't actually important to the game. And then, yeah, it could end up forcing you to grind for Geo when you don't need to. I think overall, I played very well during this playthrough, so I was only ever hurting for Geo about 3 different times where I was in front of either a bench or a stag station or somewhere like immediately like important that I needed to spend Geo on, and I didn't have enough Geo. And that's because this game also has some Geo, some ways to fuck you over on Geo that aren't based off of dying. There's 2 that I can think of off the top of my head where you just like get screwed over on your Geo. And I'll get into those later. You could also waste Geo on fragile charms as well if you end up using them and then breaking them. That's true. I ended up only buying the fragile charms to increase the amount of charms I had total, so that way I can purchase more charm slots. I never really used the fragile charms until very late game. But yeah, I think a lot of players end up buying them and then like using them and then they break, which is unfortunate. But yeah, they're kind of expensive too. But I didn't buy them because I knew that they would break, so I never bought them until I had more than enough money to just use them as extra charms, so that way I can purchase charm slots later. I'm gonna try and get all of the negatives out of the way first, because my first like playthrough session, it was relatively negative, all things considered. This boss was the first boss that gave me like an actual challenge, I think, overall. I died to this boss many times, especially this form, and it was this attack. I had such a hard time discerning the differences between the flying saucers, where the safe points were, because they had 2 different versions of that. They had one where the safe spot was like in the middle, and they had one where the safe spot was like off to the side or something like that, and you had to jump over it. And it was very difficult to discern the difference between the 2. And then there's also spikes on the side of the arena, so you can't just kind of sit on the side and wait. This boss fight was overall, I think, pretty good. A lot of people say that it's one of their favorite boss fights. It's like whatever. It's okay. I think this is a good like intermediate boss fight for like getting you acquainted with the difficulty of boss fights in this game. I think it's fine. Everything's relatively fair overall. The attacks are like pretty slow and dodgeable and reactable. And it ramps up the difficulty because you start with fighting only one mantis, and then you fight 2 at a time after you kill the first one. and then it ramps back down to after you've killed the first mantis, or sorry, after you've killed the second mantis, then it's a one-on-one again, and you just have to kind of clutch it out. So overall, the Mantis Lords, it's like a 6 out of 10. It's a pretty good fight. So yeah, I'm still getting frustrated because this boss took me a while, probably like an hour-ish of attempts before I finally beat that boss. And then the worst fucking thing happened. So this is basically the 2 hours into the game. The world opens up massively. Massively. So I'm 2 hours in. I've gotten the Mantis Claw, which gives you basically the wall jump in this game. And that opens up so much. At this point, 2 hours into the game, I have an air dash, a ground dash, and a wall jump. And that gives you access to probably like 70-60% of the map. And the map is massive. So 60% of a massive map is still a lot of stuff. And you may not be able to do everything in those areas, but you can at least go to almost every area in the game now. Like, I have access to basically the start of every area in the game no matter what. Oh, did I not actually finish the challenge? My bad. I want to get to the point where this happens. I finish the boss fight and I move on. Right? There's multiple different things that I need to do at this point. The game wants you to go to City of Tears at this point, but I end up in fucking Deep Nest, which is one of the worst, awful, terrible, terrifying places in the entire game. I hate Deep Nest. I still hate Deep Nest. Even after like finishing the majority of the game, like I just want to get in and out as fast as possible in this fucking place. I hated this place because it's just like floors that break underneath you all the time, spike pits underneath those floors, constant like enemy spam, like enemies flying at you from the darkness. I don't have the lantern at this point either that helps illuminate this area, so it's like super duper dark. There's like strong enemies that take like 4 or 5 hits to die. They're constantly chasing me. There's spikes everywhere, and this is like 2 hours into the game. It's very likely that this area was just kind of designed to be like, hey, this area is too fucking scary. Don't come here yet. Come back here later. But I end up traversing the entirety of Deep Nest because I'm just like lost here. I think I this is what, the Kingdom's Edge? What's the name of this area again? Basin. Yeah. This is the Basin, which is another like mid to, this is like late mid game, even though I'm like early game. So the game lets you go here, and I need to have a different ability to actually progress here. I have no upgrades on any of my spells. I have no upgrades on my health. I have no upgrades on my nail. I have no upgrades on how much soul I can hold. And my charms are very bare bones at this point as well. So I'm very underpowered for this area, and the game just kind of lets you go here. So that's not necessarily a bad thing, by the way. I think that this is relatively good. Yeah, this is the start of Ancient Basin. I think this is fine. I just would prefer that there was early game fast travel systems that weren't tied to Geo, and also not tied. I'm going to talk about this in a second. I wish there was a way, like a meal, or not a meal ticket, sorry, like a library card system, or like something where it was like a single use item early game, where it's like, I don't want to be here right now. I'm way over my head. Just take me back to Dirtmouth where it's safe. I think this game would have benefited a lot from a single-use item that you purchase at the shop or something like that, where it's like, I'm in way over my head and I need to go home. Because it's very likely that a player that's still getting used to the controls and still getting used to the game ends up in Deep Nest and dies multiple times and just loses all of their Geo, because that place is beyond fucked up. That system does exist later in the game, but it's basically like near the end of the game is when you could start fast traveling essentially anywhere using the Ascended Nail. So it's unfortunate that you have to wait quite a bit before you get access to that ability, when in contrast, you can end up in places that are so deep inside of the map of the game and be way in over your head and all you want to do is leave, but you can't go back the way that you came because a lot of the times you fall down a place and then you can't crawl back up because you don't have like double jump or you don't have the ability to like fly. There's no flight in this game. So like Deep Nest is one of those. I think if you fall too far down, you can't actually go back up. Or I might be mistaking that with a different area in the game. But there's a couple of places like that. As well as once you're down there, and if you die, your options are, if you don't have access to like transferring your rancid eggs or whatever, you just kind of have to like leave that geo behind and say, fuck it, I can't get that. I'm done, you know? And that could be a huge issue in this game when you have no money. And I am going to point out this shit. I'm just going to let it play. Where am I? I'm lost as fuck. I think at this whole point, I'm like, all I want to do is go home. I am like, I hate Deep Nest. I ended up in the wrong area. How far does the rabbit hole go? I just want to find a tram station so I can go back to Dirtmouth and just like figure out what I'm doing next. So I got way lost very, very early in the game. It was like an hour-long detour through like the most brutal area in the game. And at the end of it, you end up here. Drop all geo into the... I don't like it when games do this shit. Why would I do that? This isn't DLC? Why would I give you all of my money? This shit is beyond fucked up because of where it's placed, right? I entered this room. This is like basically the first room you're gonna see once you've entered the Ancient Basin. It's essentially the first place you will go to. You fall down. Immediately, there's an opening to your right. You go to check it out, and it's a fountain where it asks you to put all of your money into the fountain. And at this point, this is early game for me. I have 1,600 geo in my bank account. That's all I have to my name. And I'm like, fuck that. I'm not selling you all my geo. Right below the guy is the map. I would have thrown away all of my money and then not been able to buy the map. Also, you have to buy all the maps in this game. I haven't even talked about the map system yet because the map system also makes my head spin because it's not great. And I know it seems like I'm just ragging on the game right now. There are positive things that I will talk about later. It's just a lot of the beginning of the game is very unintuitive and very frustrating. So I don't blame players that only get like 2 to 3 hours into the game. This is 3 hours into my gameplay and I'm miserable. I am beyond miserable because the game gives you no safety net. It gives you no guidance. It lets you get this lost and it lets you get like completely fucked over. Maps are like 100 to 200 geo each, which is almost nothing though. If you are a new player that keeps dying and you are constantly at 0 geo, 200 geo to grind for that in this area would probably take like 30 minutes. It's either that or you just leave and find a different source of geo. If I'm already this far into if I'm here and I'm like, oh, I'm gonna go get the map and I wanna get the map now, I have to grind for that geo or I have to leave with no map. Those are my options. And I don't think you should be putting your player in a situation where their options are to just not be able to interact with the game in the way that like makes sense, like having a map for a Metroidvania, for example, or you just have to grind for it. Yeah, it's a lot of geo if you just dropped all of your geo.
Before my life.
Yeah. It was either this or I just completely leave it. And now I know where the next bench is because I bought the map. Which is huge. Like otherwise I would be like completely screwed, didn't know where the bench is and just like wandering around. So this area in particular I think is very, very mean to new players. And that's this game. This game is very mean to new players that don't know what's going on and don't know their way around the map already. And on top of that, you have to buy this. You have to buy this bench. So if I dropped all of my money into the well, I wouldn't have been able to buy the bench. This game is pay to win. So yeah, long story short, this area in particular is extremely rude to new players. And the fact that you're able to come here so incredibly early, I think is like, honestly, borderline bad design. Because this experience, the only reason I continued playing Hollow Knight is because I forced myself to play Hollow Knight for this review, for this moment right now, so I could review the game. because a lot of people have asked me my opinion on the game, and I never ended up finishing it before. So I'm like, I'm going to force myself to finish this game so I can make a better review, and I wanted to quit right here. This was beyond infuriating. This area, I am so far in the middle of bumfucking nowhere. There's no quick way for me to come back. I'm exploring this area where, like, I need items that I don't have yet. I'm just kind of being filled with lore that I don't really care about. So this moment was probably like the lowest moment for the entire gameplay or playthrough for me. About 3 hours in, I'm just like, this is fucking brutal. I just went through the scariest, worst place in the game. Oh. That is Deep Nest. I ended up in Deep Nest for like God knows what reason. And then once you leave Deep Nest, if you keep going, you're rewarded with the Ancient Basin, which tries to scam you out of all of your money immediately. And then you're just kind of like, oh shit, I guess I have to come back later. And it just basically pads out the gameplay, in my opinion. If you were forced to lose all of your geo in that moment, trying to find that geo in that moment, all it does is pad out the gameplay. It doesn't make the game more like difficult. It just makes it more frustrating in this moment. These moments are more prevalent early on and more impactful early on when geo is so much more important for purchasing upgrades, purchasing like charm notches, purchasing charms themselves, purchasing keys, purchasing the lamp, which is required to beat the game. It's like a required item to get the lamp for the most part. At least it's intended that it's required to beat the game. And if it's your first time playing through, you do need a lot of geo. I imagine if you're a more experienced player, you can skip a lot of this stuff and like know what's necessary and know what's not necessary. But if it's your first time playing through and you're not using a guide, there's no way that you're going to be able to know the difference. You're just going to blindly like stumble through the game, which is what Metroidvanias really are. They're kind of just throwing you in a world and you kind of blindly stumble your way through it. And this game, I think, is really not well designed for that. It's more well designed for players that are more experienced. And how are you going to like have experience if you don't play the game? So I think early gameplay is very brutal, and only the people that stick through the brutal nature of that beginning part end up seeing the late game stuff, which I think really does redeem the game in a lot of ways. The late game stuff for this game is like some of the most fun content I think I've had in a Metroidvania since like Symphony of the Night. So it's like very polarizing for me. The early game I think is very, very, very flawed because it's too open, too reliant on geo, and the actual movement upgrades that you have are spaced out very, very far in between. Mind you, this is my first 3 hours of the game. These are basically the only upgrades I'm going to have for like the first like 6 hours of the game. So like I got my first upgrade, which was just like an extra spell, a fireball attack. And then I got a dash ability, and then I got a wall jump. These are like your main movement options for the majority of the game. You do get the crystal heart, which acts similar to like a shine spark, but it's only horizontally. And that does unlock more areas, but it's not like a super useful movement option. It's more of a gimmick, if anything, in my opinion, because it's not as useful as the actual Shine Spark ability from Super Metroid or other Metroid games. But yeah, I explore the Hive a little bit. I don't have double jump, so I can't finish exploring the Hive. I eventually make it, I think, all the way around to the Kingdom's Edge, which I do love this area. I think the Kingdom's Edge is actually really, really cool. It's one of my favorite areas. All this stuff that looks like snow that's falling is actually like skin, like dead skin from a giant dead god monster. And that shit is like really cool to me. I don't know why. I just like that. But yeah, this area really is like a bunch of platforming and stuff like that. I end up finding the map guy. Again, I would have close to no geo if I dropped all my geo down the well. So I'm actually able to use my geo because I didn't drop it down the well. I actively didn't involve myself with one of the systems of the game because I knew that it would be detrimental to me. I knew that even if I got a reward like for dropping all of my geo down this well, whatever that reward is not going to be as good as being able to purchase maps, being able to purchase stag stations, and being able to purchase benches. Like those things are way more important to the entirety of the game, whereas whatever I'd end up getting for dropping all of my money down the well would not be worth it. So I actively decided to not engage with the game because of that. You could argue maybe like that creates an interesting decision that the player has to consider. Like maybe dropping all of my money down the well is worth like some, it has to be worth something. Why else would the developers put it here? And I'm gonna like spoil it for you. It gives you a fucking like piece of a heart vessel. So it's like 1/4 of an extra bit of life. That's all it gives you. Or it's the other one that's the soul vessel. I forget which. It's one of those two, which is not worth it at this point in the game. Later in the game, when you're backtracking and picking up all of the extra collectibles that you missed, yeah, sure, dropping 1,500 geo into a well for an extra like life vessel is probably worth it. But this early in the game, when I encountered it, 100% not worth it. And I had to make that decision. But it's a 50-50. Equally, I could have actually made that decision to drop all my geo down the well, and it would have been worth basically next to nothing for me at this point in the game. So I don't appreciate having stuff in the game like that. That's basically just like a haha, you got fucking scammed in the game. And there's 2 moments like that in this game, by the way. It's not just that. You get scammed again later, and I'll show that off later. Which goes to show that this game really does not care about players getting fucked over. If you're upset that I'm like critical of this point of the game, I have nice things to say about the game. It's just that this game is massive, and my first 4 hours with the game were incredibly negative. So I'm going to talk about the negative parts first. Because guess what? The beginning part of this game is mostly negative until about late mid game. Then the game actually gets good. You just kind of have to suffer through a lot of the bullshit of this game. Now, I will say that like the art and character design and boss designs and like the world itself is kind of meant to be the incentive for most players. Like exploration for the sake of exploration is kind of meant to be your guiding force forward. And if that stuff doesn't interest you, this game is going to be absolutely brutal. If you don't care that like you're in this beautiful world, like me, I'm not. This scene, this world, this area that I'm in is objectively just fucking gorgeous and awesome and fun to be in. Unless you're stressed the fuck out because you don't want to lose your geo, you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't know like what's going on. You don't know how far the rabbit hole goes. You don't even know if you're going to end up in an area where you can make meaningful progress, or if you're just gonna have to backtrack through this area again later. So all this stuff is going through my mind. I actually can't even take in all of the scenery and the ambiance that this game has to offer, which is one of the game's strongest points. So, and granted, that could just be a me issue. That could just be me frustrated that the game is actively trying to fuck me over at every turn. Because there's basically traps in this game that are designed to screw the player over, I don't trust anything in this game at this point. I feel like everything is a trap. Everything is trying to fuck me over at this point. I'm under-leveled, underprepared for this section of the game, but I'm stuck here and I don't have the means to fast travel out. So I'm not able to take in the best part of this game because of how stressed out the game has made me. And again, I'm willing to accept that that could just be a me issue, and it's the way that I decided to play through the game, or it's the way that I decided to think about the game. But honestly, the game actively tries to stress you out. The game is trying to frustrate you. The developers designed the game to be frustrating and difficult on purpose. Otherwise, they wouldn't make spike traps everywhere, or the floor that falls out from underneath you, or enemies that are flying above spike traps in a game where if you hit them, you also get knocked back. I took the game at a moderately slow pace. I mean, I don't think I necessarily rushed through the game at all. I made sure to explore every area as thoroughly as I could with the abilities that I had. I actively talked about it during my playthrough that I tried to do that as much as possible, except when I was in an area that I obviously shouldn't have been in. Like the Ancient Basin is one of them, and Deep Nest. I probably shouldn't have been there, but the game lets you be there. And again, this is my review, so if you don't like the fact that I didn't enjoy my first like couple hours with the game, then it's like, yeah, it's probably a mindset difference. Yeah, some people are willing to put up with it, is what I'm saying. Some people are willing to put up with the frustration that this game throws at you. Also, moments like this, I think, are supposed to bring you a bit of like, it's supposed to alleviate the tension. Like, it's just funny. There's just a big butt that you get to slash over and over again. This is just like an Easter egg. And I mean, I don't know what it's used for, but it's like, you know, this is supposed to like make up for the fact that you're way in over your head and you're about to die or whatever. Like, the game is meant to be brutal on purpose. Like, the game is designed to be brutal. The game is designed to be frustrating. The game is designed to make the player miserable. But you have to overcome those obstacles. I'm arguing that it's unbalanced the way that they decided to do that, because for me, most of the accomplishment that I felt in this game came from overcoming difficult boss fights and exploring certain areas at an appropriate pace. I feel like these bits of exploration didn't feel as good because it feels like I'm underprepared for these areas. And the game lets you go here underprepared, and it lets you explore areas that you're most likely going to die in. I think I played well enough that I didn't die, but I imagine if you're a newer player, like you're new to platformers, you're new to Metroidvanias, you are new to just like gaming in general. I'm so close to dying at this point, by the way, and my last bench is like so far away. Like, I have to play exceptionally carefully here. I almost died right there, and that would have been like an hour of progress lost just to like backtrack all the way over here. And I would have been absolutely livid. And this is someone who is not bad at games, by the way. If you are even like mediocre at Twitch reaction, platforming, and combat, you are going to have a miserable time with this game. That's the argument that I have, is that I had an okay time with this game, but from the perspective of somebody who isn't as good at video games in general as this, it is absolutely like miserable. Like, I can't imagine having a good time with this game. I think a lot of people praise the game from their perspective because it's like, this is a game for gamers who are good at games or whatever. But like, I don't know. I just feel really bad for anybody who just was like, this is a cute bug game and it looks like a casual fun time. And like, I like Metroidvanias because at the end of the day, Metroidvanias aren't necessarily like a hard genre. They're not known for being like a hardcore genre of games. They're meant to be like open world 2D games that you explore and have fun. So anyways, that was more of a rant on like all of the frustration that I felt at this point in my playthrough. And I'm just going to skip past it because it's like, whatever. I got very lost. I need to speed up because it's like, this was just like part one. Long story short, I got lost trying to figure out what the fuck to do in this part of the game. What is it called? City of Tears. I remember now. So I got super lost in City of Tears, and it's because I missed like a tiny platform, and that was on me. I didn't explore the area like 100% as well as I should have. So anyways, let's move on to part two. I think part two is just me looking for that part that I missed. Yeah. So I did like 3 loops around this whole map, basically looking for where I needed to go next. And it took me about, how long did it take me? It took me about an hour and a half. So it took me an extra hour and a half of backtracking to find where I needed to go to make progress. So, and that happens a handful of times in this playthrough. I ended up getting pretty lost. But yeah. What is this? Soul Sanctum? This is probably one of my favorite areas in the game. Once I get there. Am I in Soul Sanctum yet? This is like I remember this area the most because I've spent a shit ton. Yeah. Soul Sanctum is one of my favorite areas in the game. This boss fight is really good. I like the moment. I already knew what happened here, so it wasn't like a surprise to me. But there is the moment. This boss fight feels pretty fair, considering being the arc of these like little orbs is very tricky considering like what powers and stuff you're likely to have at this point. And I've explored more than I think most players would up to this point, because this is basically the next required section before moving on. At least that's what it feels like. It feels like this is the intended way to go, is that you get the Mantis Claw, you get the cloak that lets you dash, and then you're supposed to get this ability afterwards. But yeah, this boss fight's really good. The music in this area is good. The atmosphere in this area is really good. I think this took me a couple of tries to beat. I have defeated him with 0 issues whatsoever. Wow, I get a new ability? This looks so fun. Let me just grab that ability. Ha ha ha. Yeah, I knew that you get jebaited here. Yeah, this is a very memorable moment, and again, I've said this before on stream, I think Hollow Knight is at its best when it gives you a challenging boss fight with like good music, good visuals, and allows you to actually use what strengths this game really has, which is some of the unique spells and stuff like that. Yeah, this boss fight's super cool. I remember my first playthrough, this guy took me like close to 20 tries, and it felt very, very good to beat him. That's for sure. And then you get the this ability, which this spell I didn't realize at first is actually really, really good. So you can use this spell, especially the upgraded version, to do like a ton of damage, and you have some iframes when you do it. But yeah, then we go ahead and leave. I ended up getting the Dream Nail somewhere in here, just from like exploring through this area. Yeah. Where am I? And then on to the Crystal Caves or whatever this place is called. This place is really cool. I like the aesthetic. I like the idea of like them mining out crystals and stuff like that. There's no real boss of this area. There's just kind of like a platforming gauntlet that you have to do. I guess there's the Crystal Guardian that you fight for a bench, and then you fight an upgraded version later, which is cool. But yeah, this is probably like the first time that the game gives you like a somewhat competent platforming section that feels like impactful. I liked it. The platforming in this game can end up being, I think, pretty good overall. It's not like as good as like a Celeste or, you know, a dedicated platforming type game. But some of the platforming sections end up feeling pretty good once you like link all of the movement options together. I think the movement options themselves are relatively weak in just general exploration and like combat usage, but they end up like slowly becoming more impactful, more useful. Once you get like the Shadow Cloak ability, you're able to like dodge attacks by dashing, which feels a lot better than just dashing alone. The double jump makes a lot of platforming a lot nicer, but you don't end up getting the double jump ability usually until like 10 hours into your playthrough. Like this is now 6-7 hours into my this playthrough, and I finally got the Crystal Heart ability, which is basically this, like, you get to go long distances ability, so. Yeah, so I give, like, the platforming sections, like, in general in this game, like, granted, I haven't done Path of Pain yet, so that might change my opinion on it, but everything outside of Path of Pain, I give it, like, at best, like, 7.5 out of 10, if we're comparing to, like, something like a Celeste or, like, an actual platformer. But it's pretty good. I would say it gets the job done, and it helps break up the monotony, I think, of just like exploration and combat. The fact that they added platforming gauntlets, I think, is actually a really smart thing that this game did. Because it just breaks up the gameplay a lot. Like, you're no longer focusing on like, oh god, I have to like swing my sword at the right time and time my spell cast at the right time and also maneuver around like a bunch of like enemies. Instead, it's just like, okay, let me look at this platforming problem and then like try and solve it. Also, this is a sequence break you can do that's kind of cool. If you pogo off of the dude's pickaxe throw. I knew I shouldn't have been here because I didn't have double jump yet, and I knew that you probably needed double jump to actually progress here. So I just turned back around. I just wanted to know if you could sequence break up here. I actively went out of my way to not sequence break the game because I didn't want to end up in areas where I wasn't supposed to. I didn't want to end up in an area out of logic, basically, or out of sequence, basically. And I still ended up in Deep Nest somehow, super early, which fucking sucks, but whatever. But yeah. That's another thing that I think is important to talk about, that this game has such an open-ended way for you to maneuver through the world that most everybody's first playthrough is going to be extremely different based solely on like the randomness of which path you decide to go down, you know? If you were like, I want to go left instead of right, that completely changes your playthrough compared to somebody else who decided to go right instead of left and at like some key junctures. Because the game lets you go very, very far with very few items. The other thing that ends up doing is that a lot of the exploration feels very samey because most of the game you're platforming and moving through the game with just a single dash and the wall jump ability and Crystal Heart a little bit, but it's not really used outside of like some puzzles and platforming sections. So it feels very weird to like be moving through the game with just also fucking mimics. That's funny. They actually put fucking grub mimics in the game. Anyways. Yeah, this playthrough or this stream is basically... It's not coming to an end because I end up playing for a decent amount of time. I end up finding a lot of the upgrades. I'm looking to see if I can turn off the screen shake in the game. You can't turn off screen shake in this game, which is kind of annoying. Because there's certain sections where the screen shake gets very, very obnoxious. This was my first of the dream fights with no eyes here, and my stream crashed. I ran out of my internet went out in the middle of it, so, and then I end up finishing the fight basically. So I don't have footage of me finishing the fight for the first time, but I ended up finishing the fight. It was an interesting fight, not my favorite. Am I back? This area sucks. Fog Canyon, I think, is one of the worst designed areas overall to explore at first, and it gets a lot better once you've found all of the upgrades. Like once you're able to swim in the poison water, this area is much more manageable. You never get the map to this area until like really late. Your first time going through this area, you really aren't supposed to find the map. You're really only supposed to find the map once you get the at least it felt like once you get the cloak, the dark cloak dash or whatever, the one that gives you invincibility on the dash. I wasn't able to find the map until I found that, which is basically the last upgrade in the game. So it's basically like an end game upgrade. So you basically never have a map for this area, and this area looks very samey a lot of the time. That area is just kind of fucked overall, and it's really like, I don't know, and it connects a lot of areas together, so it's not like that area it's just one of my least favorite areas other than Deep Nest. So Fog Canyon and Deep Nest are kind of shared in my opinion as like really uninteresting and like fucked places to be. I wasn't very happy being there. Fog Canyon does get a lot better once you're able to find the map and all of that stuff. Last thing I will say that's negative, because I think everything from here on out becomes basically positive. I wish the map was a permanent upgrade. I wish the compass was a permanent upgrade. I don't like the fact that you have to purchase like every map individually. I think in a Metroidvania, especially one as large as this, gatekeeping the map behind Geo, gatekeeping the map behind like a lot of stuff, just it feels very bad, and it actively feels like you're discouraging the player from being able to progress on their terms. Because when I have a map, me personally, I'm the kind of player that really relies on a map because I get lost very easily, and my sense of direction in these kinds of games can get thrown for a loop. So in this playthrough in particular, you can see me like literally backtracking into the same rooms 4 or 5 times in a row. Like, wait, have I been here before? I don't remember if I've been here before. And then I finally find the landmark for that room, and I'm like, fuck, I've been here before. Well, this was a waste of my time. So it ends up feeling more like a way of padding out the game's like runtime of like, you're going to get lost more often, so therefore you spend more time in the game. More so than like actually like interesting design. For me personally, I personally didn't like that. I know some people said that they liked the map mechanics, which hey, again, this is my review. It's my own personal preference. The kind of gamer that I am is not the same as everybody else. So I dislike stuff that like I'm basically very impatient as a gamer, and I don't enjoy like stuff that feels unfair or like feels like the developers are like fucking with me. Also, I died here and it felt a little like bullshit, but whatever. I wasn't too mad at this point. Is there anything else that happened? The best ending being locked behind upgrading the dream nail here kind of sucked. I wasn't super keen on that. Oh, the Royal Waterways was also kind of a spooky area, but I didn't hate it as much as Deep Nest. Some of the enemies were extremely powerful, though. But I enjoyed the Royal Waterways overall. It felt more like a maze, if anything, but it wasn't too unmanageable. Here, I'm trying to find the map for Fog Canyon, and I never found it. Oh, this boss sucks. This boss is not good. Fucking Umu. The fact that you can't do damage to the boss at all, and you're just waiting for your homie to like give you the opening to do damage to the boss feels really bad to me personally. I didn't like that. The actual like phases of the boss it just feels like random, like when your dude decides to actually give you an opening. Sometimes he does it right away, sometimes he makes you wait like 3 or 4 attack cycles. So RNG to whether or not you could actually do damage to the boss, not good game design in my opinion, to be honest, but whatever. Plus, it's like the actual attacks themselves weren't super interesting. It was one of my least favorite bosses. Also a required boss because I think you need to go. Yeah, you need to go there to be able to like go through the area once this area basically. To get to this area, you have to kill that boss because it gives you access to be able to swim in acid water or whatever. And then, what is it? Queen's Garden. This area is pretty cool on my first time through here. I end up like spending a lot of time here, and I didn't hate it. There's a decent mix of like combat and platforming challenges. I definitely felt underpowered at this point because I think I only have 1 nail upgrade, and I haven't upgraded all of my spells yet. My charms aren't super good at this point. I feel a little underpowered for this area, but I end up enjoying my time here overall. I skipped the fight and got the acid proof? Oh, I don't know. I guess you can technically skip that fight. Oh, my bad. So that fight is actually optional? Oh, it felt like it was required, but I guess it wasn't. I will say, yeah, the foreground containing textures that block what's going on, it isn't optional? Okay, never mind then. Whatever. It is required? Okay. That was the point I was making, that boss was required. I guess I got mixed up with what it was required for, but yes, that boss is required. The fact that there's stuff in the foreground that blocks your vision, I don't like. I really hope that they make the game in some places visibly better, or at least have an option to turn that shit off, because it gets very muddy what you're supposed to do for some stuff. Yeah, from here I'm doing more exploring, trying to figure out where to go next. I find Distant Village, and then I stumble upon this part of the Distant Village. Yeah, this was interesting. I'm kind of mixed on my feelings of this like fucking surprise. You sit down at a bench. Where is it? Ah, here it is. So like I just finished going through Deep Nest, and I'm like, oh cool, there's a stag station somewhere around here. Let me go find the stag station. And I enter this room, and I'm like, oh cool, these guys seem pretty chill. I didn't decide to talk to any of them yet, because I'm like, let me rest first, right? And the game's just like, gotcha, you little stupid ass. Now you're stuck here forever. So At first I was like, man, this fucking sucks. I don't know where the fuck I am. I feel like, man, like it felt bad, but realistically it's actually not that punishing. It kind of just puts, like, this is required as well. I do wish that it healed you, to be honest, because if you're going for that bench and you have like no HP, it's really shitty. But I think I end up dying here. Yeah, I end up dying here, but it's fine. Because I thought I would go all the way back to where my original bench was, which was very, very far away. But it keeps you in this area. So the fact that you don't have to backtrack that far if you end up dying is actually all right. So I think the way that they handled this is like a pretty okay way to mess with the player, but it's actually not that punishing, all things considered. Like, I died, but really I didn't lose any progress. So at first I was very upset that they did this, but after, in hindsight, I'm like, it's actually not that bad. It's one of the ways that the developers decided to fuck with the player, but it actually isn't that big of a deal. I look back on it more fondly now than I did when I first got debated, but it's actually not that bad. And it's required to do one of the masks and like all that shit. Again, Geo, in order to open the stag station, you know, no big deal. Honestly, this game can use a geo or monetary system, but I think it would be better, instead of losing all of your geo, they probably should have just like forced you to lose half of it. And I think that would honestly alone alleviate a lot of the issues that I had with geo. If you just lost half of your current amount, that would be fine. Because if you have a lot, then you lose a lot, and that sucks, but you already had a lot of geo. So that means you're probably later in the game where your means of getting geo is like better. But if you're like already struggling and you lose a little bit, you only lose a little bit. So, like, if I only have 80 geo to my name and I lose it, it's like, oh shit, I went from 80 to 40. That's not that big of a deal. So that would be my like way of balancing it. Also, one of the last complaints that I'm going to have about this game, they kind of fucked up the infected pathways, right? Or infected crossroads, sorry. The fact that you revisit this area and it's all infected and stuff and it's different now, awesome, great, super memorable. I'm glad they did it. The fact that they decided to block off certain areas because of it is really, really dumb. Like, really, really dumb. Gathering Swarm helps with Geo. I'm talking about players that like die a lot. If you die a lot, you're going to lose Geo. Also, this game has Geo traps, which I've talked about at this point. There's the well that you can throw all your Geo into for like basically no reason. You don't get it back. I think it's up to like 1,500, which early game 1,500 is a huge amount. If you purchase all the upgrades in the game, you're going to run out of Geo pretty quickly. Like, I only have like 200 to my name right now. So if I wanted to purchase something, I like literally couldn't. The magnetic geocharm I used a lot on my first playthrough. It just feels bad that that's like tied to a charm, you know? That feels like a permanent upgrade type thing. Or it should just be like in the game. Because there's definitely moments where like Geo just falls down a pit or falls into spikes or something like that, and you just can't get it. And it feels bad for it to be tied to charm slots, because charms are like super like important for exploring the game as well. So it's like you're punishing, yeah, this stuff. The fact that like areas were blocked off is like insanely frustrating, because backtracking in this game is already not great. There are things that this game could have done better to make backtracking better. A way to upgrade Crystal Heart so it did more damage so you could plow through enemies would have been a great way of helping that out, because I don't use Crystal Heart that much for backtracking unless I'm in an area that I already know that there's no enemies that are going to stop my my charge, right? Otherwise, all you're doing is walking and dashing, walking and dashing, sometimes jumping, walking, dashing. It's not super interesting. And then if you're backtracking through areas with like weaker enemies, you're not even bothering fighting them, you know? Changing charms for combat and exploration I didn't like. Yeah, I'm not like the biggest fan. I think it's okay if there was like a generally agreed upon like charm set that worked for both exploration and like combat for like baby enemies. And then you would like before a boss fight be like, okay, I need to get like souped up. I need my best charms equipped. So I'm getting rid of my compass. I'm getting rid of Gathering Swarm. I'm getting rid of all this shit. And that would have helped. But some of these enemies, like, you need the firepower to deal with, and that's part of exploration. Combat and exploration are tied together because you need to be able to kill enemies efficiently if you want to explore properly. Otherwise, you're going to be constantly struggling during exploration, and exploration is going to be a lot more frustrating. So yeah, the charms could have been a little bit better balanced. But this is basically the point where I stop having like major complaints for the game overall. And I'm like nearly 10 hours into my playthrough. This is nearly 10 hours into my first playthrough, and I'm finally starting to have fun. So I don't think it's fair to expect the average player to purchase this game and then be like, wait a minute, you need to play 10 hours, get a bunch of upgrades, and then you get to start having fun. Which is why I'm at the point where if I recommend this game, I recommend looking up a guide at any point when you get stuck. Like, even if you're only stuck for like a minute and a half, 2 minutes, just fucking look up a guide. It's not worth it. Getting lost in this game is too frustrating. The punishments for dying and losing all of your geo is too punishing early game. Late game, it doesn't really matter, but early game, it really, really matters. And getting lost and ending up in areas where you're not supposed to too early is extremely frustrating and unfun. So I highly recommend just use a fucking guide. Just literally use a guide and you will have a lot more fun in this game. Which is unfortunate because this game, after this point, the 10-hour mark, this game gets really fucking good. But you have to slog through a lot of issues with the game. And this game gives you no directions to help alleviate those issues. You basically are just kind of forced to learn it over time. I kind of liked the challenge of these Coliseum fights. I ended up coming back later to finish them. I never finished this one on my first attempt. I got pretty close on my first attempt and ended up dying. This is like near the end of it. And then I had to fight 2 of these bosses at once and I wasn't doing enough damage. Yeah, and I got fucked. And I was like, man, that took like 5 minutes to get to that point. I don't want to do that again. So I just left. More exploration. So yeah, once you get the Crystal Heart, you're kind of just like, oh, this is when I finally decided to drop my geo into the well, by the way. And I got nothing for it because I didn't drop enough geo into the well. And at this point, I'm fucking livid. I'm just like, this is bad game design. This is bullshit. Why the fuck did they put this fucking well here? This is stupid. And then I think at this point, I finally make some progress. Yes. This boss fight's pretty cool. I like Broken Vessel. It was relatively easy for me, though. I think I beat it on my second try. Yeah, I beat it on my second try. And then I got double jump. So double jump was like 11 hours into the playthrough, and now I can finally finish exploring stuff. I did the dream version of Broken Vessel. What is his name called? I forget. And this took me a few tries. Yeah, Descending Dark is really important, I think, for this boss fight. And just combat in general in this game, Descending Dark is, like, really important. Yeah, this took me, like, 5 or 6 tries to beat because Descending Dark is so powerful. And then I'm kind of just, like, lost at this point, and I think I give up. Yeah, I remember what happened. I'm very upset with this game at this point because I'm like, no. Maybe. I forget how I'm feeling. It says Bobby's streaming. No? Okay, I'm actually chill. Okay. I had a good time. Pretty cool. This was my second session playing the game and I'm about 10 hours in. It was my third session that I was like getting frustrated. 10 hours in to our third attempt of trying to beat this game. Oh, I remember this place. You can break the speakers in the tram? I didn't even know that. This was a boss fight that I did a lot earlier in one of my other playthroughs. You can get here without Monarch Wings, right? There's a way to get here without Monarch Wings? Because I was able to do it without Monarch Wings on my first playthrough. I'm pretty sure. Because I was super underleveled when I fought these guys. I didn't even have the upgraded nail when I fought these guys the first time. I'm making it out okay in this run. I did a lot of sequence breaks on my first playthrough, and I ended up, like, miserable because of it. This game very much punishes you for trying to sequence break it. I imagine if I wanted to replay the game, I'd have a lot more fun. Like, this game is definitely a more fun time replaying than it is playing the first time, it feels like. It feels like this game is really designed for, like, replayability being more important than actually just playing the game the first time. You don't want to... Yeah. So it took me about 10 hours to get to the final boss for the bad ending. Mind you, this is with no guide and no help from chat as much as I possibly could. I was constantly like telling people no spoilers, please don't help me, I don't know, like I don't want to know, I just want to know what it's like to play the game without any sort of spoilers or anything. This fight's pretty good. It took me a couple of tries and then I finally beat it. You finally get bat. Oh, fuck. It was pretty good. I'm happy with this fight. So the Hollow Knight fight is pretty good. I just absorb him now and I become the Hollow Knight? Yes, you do. You become the Hollow Knight. Almost 69% completed. That's the only thing that I wish I did differently, is that I got 69% before beating the game. And then I basically, I'm going to skip this whole section. This is just 4 hours of me trying to figure out, what the fuck do I do next? I don't understand. So I just backtrack through a bunch of stuff, and I'm just like super lost the whole time trying to do the best ending. Right. And then we have put 16 hours and we've gotten 88% complete with the game. This is as much as I want to do by myself with as little help as possible. I kind of got some hints from chat here and there. Some people kind of spoiled some stuff and I wasn't like super stoked on that personally. But where am I? I'm kind of just like chat here and there. I'll just start it over and just let this... We have put 16 hours and we've gotten 88% complete with the game. At this point, I'm just fucking tired of like not knowing what the fuck to do. I'm like 88% complete. I've done as much as I thought I could do without a guide. So I said, fuck it, I'm looking up a guide, I'm looking up an online map, and chat can just spoil whatever the hell they want for me now. Stoked on that personally, but I'm kind of just like, I'm done trying to figure things out for myself. I'm consulting a guide basically from here on out, and if people want to give me spoilers from here on out, I don't care anymore. I have done as much of the game as I'm willing to do without going looking stuff up. I got 88% done with the game without looking stuff up, so that was it. So, oops, wrong one. So yeah, that was as far as I was willing to do, to be honest. This game is too frustrating without a guide, and with a guide and getting to unlock like the extra content and the final boss fight was actually a lot of fun. So using the guide to find all the stuff I was missing and like making actual progress, finding the different grubs was a lot of fun. Doing the DLC was fun with the Grim fight and stuff. Do I do the Grim fight here? I think I do, right? I think, yeah, I do the Grim fight the first time. This fight's really good. I enjoyed this fight a decent amount. It's pretty challenging. Obviously, it's like a lot of the attacks are reminiscent of like Dracula and Symphony of the Night and stuff and other Castlevania games. It's designed to be a similar type fight, which is really nice. And then... yeah, I ended up beating Grim the first time. I haven't done the refight yet. And then I was like, man, it's getting kind of late. I've been playing for a couple of hours. Let me just go ahead and get the good ending. Which... oh, I got the semi-good ending here, because I didn't know what to do. She's fucking dead. Yeah. So, like, I'm like, okay, wait, what do I do now? Do I kill him now? So I just keep attacking him, and then I notice all of the dream stuff coming out, and I'm like, oh shit, let me go do my supposed to do this? Dream nail stuff. And I was too late. I was too late. I didn't think that through, huh? Yeah, so Hornet's fucking dead. I can't believe Hornet is fucking dead. And yeah, so I got the even worse ending. And then we ran it back. And then we got this ending. Which this boss fight, I will say, is fucking sick. I loved this boss fight. The music's great. The ambiance is great. This game is extremely dark and like foreboding a lot of the time. And for the last boss to be in this like basically like heavenly holy area with bright lights and everything, and it's just this big moth dude. It's really, really cool. The attacks being large but easily dodgeable if you know what you're looking for is really, really cool. I thought that would spawn higher. I had a hard time finding the balls on my screen because I was using Flux at this point. So the screen is like super yellow because I'm trying to block out white light so it doesn't like burn my eyes. So, and the starts of, so everything looks yellow to me and the background is yellow. So it was very hard to finish, or not finish. It was very hard to see what was going on in this fight. All right. So I turned Flux off to actually finish the fight. This was my first time getting to this part of the fight. And yeah, these like light rays are huge, but easily dodgeable if you're paying attention. Everything that this boss throws at you is very dodgeable and very fair. But it's extremely powerful if you get hit. So like it punishes you hard for mistakes, but those mistakes are easily rectifiable. Not my fault. I literally did everything perfectly. I don't know, making excuses at this point. Yeah. So yeah. I think this is the final attempt. But yeah. Long story short, the boss fights in this game are like the best part of the game in my opinion, and the exploration in this game could be a lot better, but it gets better late game once you have upgraded combat abilities, because being able to trivialize combat in this game helps a lot, and the movement options that you do get better later, especially once you get the cloak dash that lets you dash through enemies. But ending on this boss fight I think is awesome. I think the ending helps a lot with this game, but I would never blame somebody for saying they didn't enjoy Hollow Knight because the beginning part of the game was too rough for them and they just never finished it. Because like if you don't want to get through the really annoying parts of the beginning part of the game, you never get to experience the best parts of the game. So you can't really blame people for not wanting to do that. So yeah, this game has a lot of flaws that I think are really tied to the beginning and like early middle part of the game, and how progression is tied to that. And I think part of it's just, unfortunately, due to the fact that the game is so massive and open during the early and mid parts of the game, that you can end up super lost and kind of screwed early on very easily. But then once you're in the end game and you have all this like really powerful spells, your charms are useful, you have like all these different items at your disposal and stuff like that, it's actually really, really fun to link everything together. So yeah, the last things that I haven't done in the game are, there's a couple of dream fights that I haven't finished. I haven't finished fighting Grim, the refight with Grim, and I haven't done Path of Pain DLC, and I haven't done the Pantheon DLC stuff. So at some point I might finish that stuff. But yeah, I finished Hollow Knight up to... Let's get to the end. I got 106% completion, and it took me basically 24 hours to do so. So that's how I spent 24 hours playing Hollow Knight, to just distill it down to as little as I possibly could for a review live on my stream, and that took quite a while. But hopefully I could edit this down into something that actually makes sense, because I kind of rambled in a lot of spaces. But overall, my opinion of the game is, I think the game is really good, but it takes a lot of perseverance through some bad game design decisions for specific types of players. Players that have a low tolerance for grinding, a low tolerance for like gotcha moments and bullshit, and a low tolerance for stuff that's just generally unfair. Because there's fair challenge in this game, and then they also throw in some unfair things, in my opinion. And I kind of wish that they toned back on some of the unfair things and worked more on like creating challenging combat encounters or challenging platforming encounters more often, as opposed to some of the like more haha, you fell into a spike trap and now you lost your HP or whatever. But thank you for playing Hollow Knight, so I don't have to. You're welcome. But yeah, either way. As much as I hate the meme, there's a reason people call it the Dark Souls of Metroidvanias. The issue is, okay, so this is going to be my last thing because this game is not like Dark Souls in the way that I think the game intended to be like Dark Souls. Because Dark Souls, a lot of the haha gotcha things that game throws at you, ultimately, I think are more fair in the long run. Because death in Dark Souls, it feels very punishing, but in the long run, it's actually not that punishing. Because once you've leveled up, those level ups are permanent, right? You can't take away somebody's levels, except for like, actually there is a way to de-level in Dark Souls, isn't there? In Dark Souls 1, I think there is, right? Anyways. I think the game's combat is its own thing. It's not very Dark Soulsy at all. It's actually it's actually really interesting, fun, fast-paced combat once you get more options. I think early game combat in Hollow Knight is actually brain dead easy and kind of boring. Your only options are, do I swing my sword or do I throw my fireball? And that's kind of it. Once you get the dash ability, it's like, okay, do I dash out of the way or do I jump out of the way or what? But once you have the cloak dash, once you have double jump, that actually adds to the speed of combat a lot in the game. And then there's other spells that help you out. There's the Dark Descent that gives you iframes. There's the Howling Scream or whatever that just does shit tons of damage. So you're like actively looking like, when's my opportunity to do this move because it does the most DPS, that kind of thing. So yeah, spells are what makes the combat fun, and you don't get access to the good spells until like mid-late game. And most of the time, if you don't upgrade them either, they're kind of underpowered. So, but yeah, combat gets fun mid-late game. It's kind of mediocre at the beginning part. Platforming gets pretty fun mid-late game, but platforming early on is pretty mediocre and not that fun. Boss fights are okay early game. There's some okay early game boss fights. I think your first encounter with a Hornet is pretty good. I think the encounter with the Mantis Lords is pretty good. The rest of the bosses feel pretty mediocre from the early game, from what I remember. And then it picks up again in the mid game. Like Dung Defender's a fun boss. Broken Vessel is a fun boss. Hollow Knight, the actual final boss of the bad ending's good. Radiance is a good final boss. Like that's a really good boss fight. I didn't have a lot of fun with the, Hive Knight. I didn't really like Hive Knight too much. The refight with Hornet was pretty okay. It just felt like the same fight, but a little bit faster. The Grim fight, DLC fight was great. I think that's most of the bosses that come to my mind originally, so yeah. Most of the good boss fights are DLC. I've done most of the game at this point now, so I'm going to finish up some of the last boss fights that I missed at some point. I might even do it today. I just need to rest my voice because I was talking like way too much for this review. So I'm going to rest my voice for a second, get some water. We can boot up Hollow Knight and figure out which DLCs and boss fights that I'm missing. And then we can do those if you guys are down. Because at this point, I've converted. I'm no longer a Hollow Knight hater. I think the game is really good, but I'm willing to accept that the game has flaws. Especially early game. I think most of the early game issues get mitigated around anywhere from the 6 to 10 hour mark, but expecting somebody who's like really struggling to push through the 6 to 10 hour mark is kind of a lot to ask for. And it also just kind of depends on like your luck when it comes to discovering certain upgrades or discovering like easier paths versus harder paths. And that's unfortunately a issue that is baked into being a Metroidvania that is so insanely open world, which is also one of its strong suits. So I'm not saying there's an easy fix or an easy solution or that the devs are brain dead stupid for creating a game that's hard in the middle of the game, Yeah, even in the speedruns, the first 10 to 30 minutes, depending on the category, suck for the same reason. Yeah, it's just a little slow at the start and a little too open-ended, But yeah, either way, I think the game really does get much, much better late game. Once you have more upgrades, once you have more options available, it does get pretty good. Yes, Silk Song, if they add more movement options and exploration options, I think that'd be great. I do wish this game had a flight option, like super late game. Something like if you beat one of the not DLC bosses, but one of the dream bosses, like if you backtrack to an area that's only available once you've upgraded the nail to basically be at its final form. If you backtrack through there and then beat one of the bosses, like the dream version of the what is it, Sanctum fight, Soul Sanctum, wherever that dude. Maybe if you beat the dream version, you get flight that way. Or if you beat the Path of Pain, maybe then you get the option to fly around. That would be another cool option. Because backtracking without the ability to just like fly kind of sucks in some areas. Most areas it's fine, but in some areas I feel like I've already been through this area. Please just let me fly past these enemies, please. That'd be nice. You know, and have the flight be like based on a timer maybe, so you're not just infinitely flying. Or if you get hit, you get knocked out of the flight or something for a period of time. I don't know. You could balance it so it's not too broken, but yeah, I hope there's more movement options. I hope exploration gets fixed. The game is still beautiful. The game is still super fun. But it just takes a while to really get to the point where you can appreciate it. And I don't blame people for not wanting to spend 10 hours to get to that point. But once you've spent that 10 hours, now I'm just like, I'm hooked and I want to keep playing the game. So but yeah, thank you guys for letting me rant about this game. We're gonna finish up some DLC and see how much fun that is. So